when I heard about Andy Matthews from Andrew Rice, who you recently spoke at his coach camp, Andy, I was like, I've got to get this man on. I have to introduce him to our global audience. So I'm thrilled to have you. Thank you for joining our podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well, Mark. Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Well, as I'd mentioned to you before I hit record, I'm into this sort of stuff. I'm very holistic in golf instruction, and our podcast touches all corners to help people to get better. And when I read more, I was like, well, I've got to get the expert to talk about it. So before we talk about breathing and HRV, heart rate variability and stuff, and what you do, I want to introduce you to our audience. So tell us a bit about you, please.
Sure, Mark. So I'm the director of golf performance at Neuropeak Pro. I played professionally for 10 years after I finished my collegiate play at the University of Michigan,
All right.
and spent most of my time playing what's now PGA Tour Canada. I actually spent 2 years down on the Sunshine Tour in South
All
Africa,
right.
and
Mm-hmm.
kind of chased it up here. So I've been in and around the game for a long time. Had the opportunity to play at the highest level for a while and saw some glimpses of greatness, but have ultimately found myself here at Neuropeak Pro, being able to help individuals learn how to breathe better so that they can perform under pressure.
You know, it's uncanny. I talk to all these great minds by way of this podcast and stuff, and all of us. I'll throw myself in there. Some we've all been in golf, and there was a catalyst moment. There was like a watershed where we went into an industry within our great game, and and all of us get to look back now and go, if only I'd known this when I was playing golf. I mean, am I right? Have you had this moment too, now that you're doing what you're doing?
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, I was actually a client of Neuropeak Pro when I was
Okay.
playing full time. And
Mhm.
so for me, that watershed moment was an introduction to Neuropeak Pro, because I was struggling taking what I would see in practice all the time into the golf course. And I was frustrated. My instructor was frustrated, and um, led to the introduction at Neuropeak Pro, where I started learning how to breathe better myself. And, as life would have it, now I have an opportunity to be on this side with the company, helping some of the players I used to compete against get a little bit better.
I know it sounds trite, but when you speak of breathing, and I showed my daughter yesterday afternoon a clip from Novak Djokovic. Now he talks about showing up in the big moments, and he feels like when you get to that elite level, it's just the ability to show up, and not necessarily the talent. And he spoke of the purpose-driven breathing and stuff. And everyone listens to it and goes, oh, okay, I've heard this before, blah, blah, blah. Sports psychologists think positively stuff. But I've contended that breathing is necessary for life.
Mhm.
First thing we do as human beings, we get a slap in the face and we take a breath, and that's that, right? Yet we don't really know how to do it properly. Isn't it a fascinating concept to you, given what you know now?
100%. And yeah, like you said, it's something we do every minute of every day without really ever thinking about it. And until there's an awareness moment where we start to see, how the way that we are breathing on a day-to-day basis is perhaps getting in the way of us performing at our best, it's one of those things that we take with us everywhere we go. And there's an opportunity to learn how to do it better. And I think it's really fun when you start to get those glimpses. We've all had them, right? Where we've
Hmm.
been doing whatever it is that we're doing. I mean, whether it be on the golf course or not, where you find that sweet spot, you find the zone, you find flow, whatever you want to call it. Um, and we kind of do just about anything to bottle it. And from my experience playing, and now my experience being on this side, helping some of these top elite athletes and elite performers do it, just seeing that changing the way you breathe can make that big of a difference. Not only is it motivating, but like you said, it's pretty fascinating.
You know what's cool too, and I've been fortunate throughout my career, and after I've worked with CBS for a while now, when I first began, I was a budding announcer, and they hooked me up with a vocal coach. His name is
Hmm.
Arthur Joseph, and this man is he's like a doyen in my world, like a mentor. And the first thing he got me on was just my stature and my breathing.
Hmm.
And I notice for the folks watching on YouTube, now I notice when folks are short of breath when they talk. And I watch you, how you're so disciplined and how you deliver what you want to say. Then you pause, and I can see the breath taken quickly, and then off you go again. I mean, is this conscious or is this just something? Well, I guess it's a function of what you do too, right?
It is. I'm intentional about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also something that I've practiced. And when I'm working with one of our athletes, specifically a lot of our golfers, I always say there's three things you can't do and breathe at the same time. You can't eat, you can't drink, and you can't talk.
All right.
And we start to move into, a situation that might make us a little nervous. And, what do we often do? We start talking about it. Our mouth might be getting a little bit dry. So we
Yeah.
take a drink of water and we're just kind of start perpetuating those feelings of stress just because we're not getting the breath that we need. And, start that chain reaction through the nervous system and up through the brain that allows us to perform at our best.
It's amazing to me how when you take a minute, and I'm talking to myself now, and you respect punctuation, which is there to allow you to take, or one, to take a breath, between
Mhm.
sentences. It feels so long, and you feel like if you're nervous, you want to get it out of the way, but yet it's so crucial to performance at any level. And this is not just golf, this is just life in general.
Right. Right.
Your comments on that?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And it's why we've been told thousands of times, like, hey, Mark, you're a little stressed. Take a
Mhm.
deep breath. And so what do we see ourselves do? Or if you're watching the golf tournament on Sunday afternoon and you see someone take a breath, you can visibly see it because you see this big,
Yeah.
high, exaggerated breath. And the problem with that is you're doing it wrong. And we shouldn't necessarily see when somebody's taking a deep breath. And I would argue that you don't need to take a deep breath. You just need to breathe better overall so that you have an opportunity to manage your stress response, to manage your nervous system so that you're in control of the situation because you're a little bit more in control of yourself.
You've touched on it, and you spoke about the autonomic nervous system and stress and such. But apart from staying alive, okay, the advantages of proper breathing are, list them for the folks, please.
So you mentioned the autonomic nervous system, and just to dip into the science for a second
All
so
right,
that
go for it.
people have an understanding, it's the part of our body that's taking in cues from our environment and
Mm-hmm.
making adjustments to be able to have what the body necessarily thinks is the appropriate response to the actual situation that we're in.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And when we start getting under stress, we've all felt those feels from the muscle tension, the cold, sweaty hands, certainly faster heart rate, those butterflies in the stomach.
Yeah.
Of all of those automatic functions, the only one that you can control by putting attention to it is your breathing. You don't tell your pores to open up and sweat when you
Yeah.
walk outside on a hot day. They're just going to do it. They're reacting to the environment.
Mm-hmm.
So when we start to look at the importance of breathing, it's important because it's the one that can influence that stress response, that nervous system in return. And the analogy that usually resonates really well with golfers is it works like a metronome. We've
Okay.
all used a metronome to pace our putting,
Mm-hmm.
and the breathing works like a metronome to start to pace our nervous system through heart rate variability. And so if we're in a spot where we're breathing quickly, kind of that rapid tick tock, tick tock sends a signal to the nervous system that we need to be up for something.
Yeah, exactly.
And often that happens when there's really nothing to be up for. When we measure individuals breathing just without thinking about it, they're usually in the range of 15 to 18 breaths per minute. And
Yeah.
that's 2 to 3 times faster than where the body starts to find that balance. And so when we start to slow it down and provide some guidance and some feedback on how to do that properly, the more rhythmic tick, tock, tick, tock sends an equally powerful signal back to the nervous system that even though everything around me is telling me, hey, I need to be up for this shot feels more important than anyone I've hit today, I can still be in a spot where I can relax, settle in, and perform.
That's cool. Um, I'm not sure if you were featured on it. So if in it, if you were, do forgive me. But I read a fascinating book called Breath by James Nestor.
Mhm.
In fact, I finished it. It took me 2 flights, one to LA and back, basically on an announced trip.
Yeah.
And there were so many things that were spoken about in there, and one of them was breathing rates and how
Mhm.
you spoke of how many breaths we take in a minute. And then the calculations from experts like yourself, they're saying essentially a breath every 5 seconds. And then I thought about this, and then I got a video of someone who was in the ICU, and their breathing was basically being done by intubation. And I was fascinated then at how long the breath in and out took. But then I'm like, golly, this is how we're supposed to be. Yet most of us are almost panting our way through life.
You're right. And part of the reason that we breathe faster is because we're using the wrong muscles to do it. Where
Okay,
we are right now, we're keeping our core tight.
I'm trying to.
And it makes it really difficult for the belly, for the diaphragm to kind of expand. And so a proper breath, if you're watching someone do it, when they inhale, you should see their belly fill up a little bit like a balloon.
Hmm.
And that takes more time to get that air down lower into the bottom of your lungs, into your belly, so that it can expand than just breathing, say, from the chest up. That's why it doesn't take a lot of time to take that proverbial deep breath we've all been told to take.
Yeah. You just raise your chest. Exactly.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it doesn't take much.
I love that. And you know what I realized too, right? Um, back, I shouldn't date this because it's a podcast, but when Bryson went on Bryson's trip to be Bryson the Basher,
Mhm.
and it was still during COVID, and we were out there, and so golf courses were empty, and we had the call, and it was in Detroit, and I'd watch him then, big beefy Bryson, take these really almost animated breaths in and out and in and out,
Mhm.
to almost jack himself up like a power weightlifter. And I was like, this is cool. Then I put on a heart rate monitor and I did the same thing. And my heart rate shot up. And it began to occur to me that the breath out was almost equally as important, if not more so, to settle the system down. I'd love your commentary there, please.
Yeah, so it's interesting you bring up Bryson. Bryson was one of our first clients
Mm-hmm.
from the PGA Tour to come work with us at Neuropeak Pro.
All right.
And you take Bryson back to Bay Hill when he's trying to hit it over the pond,
God.
right?
Okay.
And
Uh-huh.
you're seeing that animated breathing, and he's doing it purposefully to activate his nervous system, maybe get a little bit more cortisol or adrenaline in the system to perhaps find a few more miles an hour at club head speed so he can send it.
Okay.
What I think is often overlooked with a situation like that is two things. One, he's doing that under control because he knows that's what he needs for that current situation.
Yeah. Huh?
And then two, as soon as that ball's down range, he's backing his nervous system back out using the breath.
Mm-hmm.
And so you look at when Bryson was doing that, not only was he one of the longest players on tour, but he was also one of the best putters on tour. I think he was making somewhere of, it was like upwards of 90% of his putts inside 10 feet.
Yeah.
So Mark, and you see this when you're on the golf course and you're walking the fairways with these guys. the physiological and the physical state to be able to send it 340 in the air and make 90% of your putts inside 10 feet are on opposite ends. So what are you doing to set yourself up best to be able to manage yourself between those two states? And Bryson's a perfect example of using his breathing to be able to manage that. And there's more players than on tour that are using breathing to be able to help manage themselves.
Well,
And
well,
it
that's the thing.
becomes a little bit of a secret weapon that you've got in your back pocket.
Well, that's the thing. I have a number of them on the show, and professional. They'll give you some, but they don't share all of the tea. And then I'm like, well, what advice would you give the listener, the club golfer at home, to make that nervy 5-footer to win the match? And the first thing I hear from everyone is, "We'll breathe." And then I can
Mhm.
imagine the audience going, "Okay," and then they still feel as nervous and as jacked up over the thing, and they're like, "Oh, whatever," and they give up on this. So I'm glad you're bringing some clarity to the situation.
Yeah, it's become that next thing,
Yeah,
if we're talking about elite golf, tour level golf, there's nth degree of separation that's separating these players from a win versus a top 10 versus, making cuts and keeping cards.
yeah,
And, they all have access to the tour trucks and their equipment is dialed in. They're in the gym, nutritionists, you name it. They've checked all the boxes. But so has everyone else. So
hmm,
where can you find that little bit of separation? And from our standpoint, a lot of our clients will hear me say, like, what we don't do at Neuropeak Pro is sports psychology.
okay,
Essentially, what we do is we help upgrade the hardware for that software to run on. You can have the best routine, the best process. Um, but if your body is not in a position to be able to run that, it doesn't matter how good that software is, you're just going to keep kind of banging your head up against the wall.
hmm.
And we've all heard and we all know we need to get out of our own way. We need to trust our swing, have fun. Like you could list them out, but how do you actually do that? I know I need to, but when the pressure's on, or I do have that 5-footer to take a few dollars off my buddies in the Saturday game, what are you doing to set yourself up to make that? You have the skill, you've seen it on the practice putting green, but why does that one shot suddenly become that much more difficult to hit?
Crazy. I've long maintained that the biggest wrecker of a golf swing or a putting stroke is tension.
Mhm,
And improper breathing is a surefire way to tension and hence misfiring at the worst or the most inopportune times for your golf swing. That choking under pressure. And that word
mhm.
choking is essentially, not proper breathing, right? Yes.
Yeah, it can certainly be rooted back to breathing because when you're breathing faster and we're sending that signal to the nervous system that we need to be up for something, that's activating our body's fight or flight response,
Okay.
like our natural ability to try and survive. So instead of our body getting into a spot where it can perform, it's just trying to get it over with. And that's why you see routines speed up. People talk faster, as they're coming down the stretch or when they've just got that 5-footer
Yeah.
because everything gets going faster and they've lost awareness or don't have the ability to be able to just to tap the brakes a little bit and bring the body back into a spot where it can access all of those skills that you've trained and you've got them, but you just have a hard time doing it when it matters.
I dare say, correct me if I'm wrong, but breathing is habitual. And this is a personal anecdote here because I look back on all of my days competing and everything I've always done. I've always been sort of ramped up. And now learning to breathe appropriately, it's something that has got to be conscious with me. I can't, because if I get back to my old ways, it becomes short and shallow and I'm all ramped up. And then now I get to, I hate the sound of it, but I get to listen back to myself on TV and I'm like, oh my gosh, did I actually sound
Mhm.
like that? Yes.
Yeah, and I think just like anything else we do, breathing better is a learned skill.
Okay.
We once knew how to do it. If anybody has watched a baby breathe recently, you see that that belly is the only thing that's increasing and decreasing in size. So fortunately for us, we've all done it properly at one point in our lives, but we've unlearned how to do it just because of the stressors of everyday life that happen to kind of build up. So
Yeah.
just like making a swing change or working on our putting stroke, trying to groove a new movement pattern, breathing can be approached the exact same way. And so when we start to have some feedback or some coaching to be able to show you what it looks like when you physically breathe this way and what happens to your nervous system, or if we breathe this way, what happens? It creates an opportunity for us to start to learn how to do it better to the point where we're not out there on the golf course trying to win a breathing tournament.
Right.
We wanna breathe and practice it so it becomes a bit more unconscious
Uh-huh.
so that it's happening naturally, but when we do have moments throughout a round of golf where we're starting to get a little bit uncomfortable or that shot on the 7th tee doesn't quite fit our eye, you have something in your back pocket that you can go to and help bring your body back into a more calm, present state.
Okay, you're going to show folks how they can train this stuff, and for golfers listening to this, this is not just for golf people. This is for life. This is for well-being. Anyone with health issues and stuff too, it's the first place to be. I mean, I'm seeing more and more. Maybe it's the algorithm that's got me to say, well-being. Get out and get barefoot in the grass and get some sunshine
Mhm.
on you, and breathe properly. Meditate. I take ice baths, which has taught me to breathe properly fast. Okay. Well, so I think I've still got some going to go. But before we get to that, I want you to talk about, because you've spoken of the diaphragmatic breathing. Talk about nasal breathing versus mouth breathing too, please, Andy.
Yeah, so we get that question a lot, Mark. And the first thing I always say is, we want to get oxygen in,
Uh-huh.
right? And
Mhm.
James Nestor talked a lot about it in his book, the benefits of nasal breathing over mouth breathing. But if you've got a cold or a deviated septum or whatever it might be, like we need to get the air in.
Yeah.
But if we move to the other side of that, the ideal is in through the nose and out through the nose.
Okay.
The next best is in through the nose and out through the mouth.
All right. Interesting.
And the reason for the nasal breathing, one, your nose filters air. It helps slow things down. So when we're already breathing quickly, using our two nostrils kind of helps naturally slow the inhale down. It's a lot easier to breathe quicker through
Through the
your
mouth.
mouth.
Yeah.
And again, dipping into the science a little bit, there's nerve endings in our nasal cavity. You start to talk about the vagus nerve and vagal tone. I'm not going to get too far down those weeds, but when that nerve gets activated by breathing in and out of the nose, it activates our body's parasympathetic response, which is the opposite of our fight or flight. So not only are we able to breathe um, slower, but we're also supporting that nervous system by doing that. So it's a little bit of a double dip. So that's the ideal that I like to see. But rule number one is really the nasal breathing helps slow things down.
Amazing. I've found, again, personal, maybe I'm fishing for advice here before we get to the HRV. When when I breathe in through the nose, out through the nose, I'm unable to breathe out through my nose as much as what I can when I breathe out through my mouth. And
Less resistance.
okay, interesting. Fascinating. Okay, let's get to the HRV because your belt, the Intel belt, I hope I pronounced that correctly,
Mhm.
that measures HRV as well. Tell folks what heart rate variability is and why it's important.
Yeah, so heart rate variability, different from heart rate. So when you grab the handles on a piece of cardio equipment or you look at your, kind of standard heart rate monitor, you just see like, hey, I'm at 70 beats per minute.
Mm-hmm.
What heart rate variability is, it's actually looking at the timing between each of those. So
Okay.
even though we may see on that piece of cardio equipment, we're at 70 beats per minute, that's not happening at a consistent interval.
Metronomic base, exactly right.
Exactly.
Mhm.
The heart rate variability is measuring the variability in those heartbeats. And the wider that spacing can be between heart rates gives your body, gives your heart a more adaptability to different situations. So when you look at that metronomic, very tight, consistent beat, that's a heart that's rigid. So it doesn't have the ability to flex up or flex down to meet the demands of whatever that environment is. And
Mm-hmm.
so again, different from heart rate, the heart rate variability just gives us a little bit more insight into what the body's stress response is.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've seen is that people always associate and say a 1-to-1 ratio, a high heart rate with high stress. You can be a little bit more activated and have a higher heart rate, but still kind of be in that sweet spot or near that sweet spot as measured through heart rate variability.
Okay, interesting.
So, where you may have seen, players like will run sprints
Yeah,
and
no.
then go try and make their 4-footer. Yeah, you're out of breath. Your body's been activated, but it's a different type of stress, if you will, than what you may see when you are standing over that 4-footer and you haven't run sprints. So when you look at what the Intel belt does from a heart rate variability perspective, it helps correlate how your physical respiration patterns, what your breathing actually is doing from an inhale and exhale consistency,
Mm-hmm.
and show you how that's being received by your body. We can breathe in a way, as we've talked about, in a way that helps activate your nervous system, which we typically do every day when we're not thinking about it. But then there's that way to breathe that helps pull the body out of that stressful fight or flight state into that calmer, more focused one. And the Intel belt gives you that real-time feedback to be able to see, hey, am I breathing in a way that's supporting my body best for the actual situation that I'm
Ah, this sounds like the perfect segue to you getting the screen and showing off the graphic that you have
in?
there. Folks, what Andy is going to do now is he's going to grab the screen. If you're listening on audio, we'll try and describe, or just go to YouTube and check it out. And this is a graphic here that's basically feedback from the Intel belt. That's the letter N, TEL, TEL belt. And it's basically looks almost like a heart rate beat going up and down. But this is breathing, right, Andy? So describe what we.
Yeah, this is breathing. So for those who have the visual in front of them, the green line with the circle at the end that's moving up and down,
Mm-hmm.
that's a breathing pacer. We've all seen breathing pacers. There's thousands of them out there that you can use. This one happens to be set at 6 breaths per minute. So a 4-second inhale, a 1-second hold or transition over the top, and a 4-second exhale with a 1-second transition into the next breath.
And
That's our
this
guide.
is how we can train proper breathing when we do this, right?
Exactly. It's just like using video or your launch monitor. You kind of know the parameters that you're looking for and what's guiding you towards them. And so this is completely customizable if you want to use a different respiration rate, if we want to use a box breathing or a 2x breath. We spend a lot of time with this symmetrical breath that you're seeing on the screen right now because it moves the body into that more balanced state quickest.
Okay. When you
And
say
so,
balance, that's like stress reducer, just get you to your neutral kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that balanced state is actually our term for using one of the known heart rate variability metrics. It's the low frequency HRV,
Hmm.
that in real time, when you're breathing more consistently, more rhythmically, starts to increase in percentage.
So
So,
practicing like this, because I wear a Whoop, I'm an
mhm.
ambassador for them, and of late I've been a little ill, so my HRV has been down. But if I put on this Intel belt and started practicing my breathing, I should see my heart rate variability number begin to improve, even though I'm a little ill, correct? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think, that's one of the things where the Intel belt designed to be a trainer and
Mhm.
not a tracker like Whoop or Aura or Fitbit or Garmin, name your fitness wearable. Um, the Intel belt helps you kind of close that gap where you said you're a little bit ill, HRV is down, or you're in that spot where you did everything that you knew you should do yesterday,
Yeah.
and you woke up today and your recovery score was 71%. But you need to
Might have been
go be
because I had a couple
100% of yourself today.
Might have been because I had a couple red wines last night too. As I look at it moving back and forth, I'm wondering, is this you right now? Is it reading? Or is this just a graphic you had built?
So this is a screen recording of me breathing.
Interesting.
Um,
There are
and
there are other lines there too. You had the green one where you're supposed to.
yep,
Then there's a blue line that's moving and a red line as well. Describe what those are, please.
yeah. So the blue line is your actual physical respiration. So
Okay.
every time you inhale, that blue line and that dot goes up.
Mm-hmm.
And as you exhale, that dot comes down. And so your goal when learning how to breathe better with the Intel belt is to chase your breathing, chase that guide, chase that pacer with your breathing. That's the one thing that you can control. And what happens, Mark, when we start to look at heart rate and heart rate variability, our heart, which is the red line,
Okay.
starts to entrain itself to our breath. And so when you start to see those three lines line up, we know the body's moving into that more balanced state.
Cardiovascular makes so much sense now. Cardio, breathing, vascular, vein. Yeah, crazy. As it was moving up and down for a while you were describing, perhaps me, if I was listening, sort of, but I was trying to breathe with that green dot moving up and down. And whenever I've done the de-stressing exercises with Andrew Huberman on my Whoop app, my stress level goes up. And then it says at the end, perhaps you were breathing too fast. And it's amazing how I'm looking at this going, I have to get one of these things because it's uncanny how quickly you can learn appropriate habits. And to me, folks, this is more important than fixing your golf swing because this is who you are. As you
Mhm.
this is who you are.
Yeah, and that's the whole premise of why we developed the Intel belt is we know breathing, it's been around for thousands of years in terms of how people have implemented into their lives to help manage stress, find calm, like you name it.
Hmm.
But nobody really knew how to do it properly.
Yeah, you're right.
And to be able to provide that real-time feedback that says, hey, when I breathe this way, I can elicit this response out of my body becomes really, really powerful. And like we were saying, it's a learned skill. It can become a habit. It can become something that you do without ever having to think about it. But now you know that you're physically breathing well. And if you were thinking that you were following that breathing pacer on pace, and it said perhaps you were going too fast, well, with the Intel belt, you can actually see, are you going too fast
Uh-huh.
or are you right where that pacer wants you to be? And we can measure that. Those that are seeing the screen, you see in the lower left-hand corner that consistency score. It's pinned at 100. Like I said, I've spent more time breathing and breathing with the Intel belt than arguably anyone.
All right.
So I have the ability to control my breathing very well. And so
So
we're
100
seeing
is a good score.
it's a 0 to 100 scale. And so
Okay.
it's the platform is recognizing that my respiration rate is staying the same and I'm hitting the same tops and bottoms of each breath. That consistency is there because our heart thrives on that consistency.
Okay.
And then that number on the right side, that balance, that's measuring how balanced our nervous system is using that low frequency HRV metric. Also a score out of 100. If you're above 80, you're pretty much out of that fight or flight state. If you're
Okay.
60 to 70, it'll turn yellow and you've got a little bit of room to improve. Or if it's red and you're below 60, you're pretty stressed.
Mm-hmm.
And to make it a little bit more interactive, we know some people have had a hard time just sitting still and making time for themselves, or perhaps have tried meditation. It's like, I can't calm my brain down.
Yeah.
Um, we've gamified breathing a little bit. And so the higher that consistency score is and the higher that balance score is, the higher those points that you're seeing in the middle
Mm-hmm.
accumulate. You can see now it's at 90, 92.9.
Yeah.
9,300. The goal on a daily basis is to start to work up to about 10,000 Intel points per day.
Okay.
Takes roughly about 10 minutes to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And what we did is we leaned into that understanding, that knowledge that 10,000 steps a day helps lead to better health.
Okay.
Our experts, and the way that we designed the algorithm was 10,000 Intel points helps lead to that better autonomic nervous system balance. And when we hit 10,000 points, you get a
You
nice
got
little
it. You just got it.
feedback, and there you go. And like, cool, I checked the box for the day. And like you said, Mark, like we can talk about this in the context of golf and how some of the best players in the world are using this, but the positive spillover effects into just your everyday life at home or at work or with your family, like are just as powerful.
Yeah, think of the medical benefits and everything. And you made a point earlier. I just want to camp on this. You can close the screen if you want. The you said to the effect, I can't calm my mind down. My mind is loud. There's a lot going on. And then you're right, the sports psychologists will talk about, visualization and stuff. But if your system's all jacked up, it's not happening because you say the hardware is not working. And so the software is going to be all haywire as well. And that's where this is fascinating. And it almost makes me think, why aren't, why isn't everybody using this? It makes so much sense to me.
Yeah, like I was saying, there's more players across sport, and in C-suites and stay-at-home parents and students that are starting to use breathing to help just manage themselves better in whatever it is that they're doing. There's more than 60 players on tours around the world that are using the Intel belt to practice their breathing. We're in 18 or 19 NHL locker rooms. Kirk Cousins, Minnesota Vikings. He was in the Netflix series Quarterback,
Yeah.
episode 4. His work with us is highlighted. So this is something that people are integrating, and usually it was their sport or their day job that led them to us or this type of training. But they all quickly realize that this has more life benefits than it necessarily does even professional benefits, if you will.
It's going to lower my blood pressure. Hey, a quick question. You wear the belt as simple as wearing a heart rate monitor around your thorax, or is that how it's worn?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's worn just like you would a standard heart rate monitor. The chest strap has the heart rate pads on the back.
Mhm.
The difference being that the sensor of the Intel belt is able to pick up the movement and speed of your belly as you're breathing, and it will show you if you're breathing well, or if you're still getting a little bit high in chest. It'll also show you that. So it's pretty non-intrusive. You know, you throw it on for 10 minutes a day and just carve out that time to breathe. And it's really, you know, it's exciting to see how that the cumulative benefits start to stack up. And it's not just, you know, in the moment I'm stressed, I'm going to breathe better, but it's something that you practice and you build up over time. So one, you add in a little bit more adaptability and resiliency, if you will, to those inevitable stressors that we know we're going to encounter. But we're never going to train the nervousness or all of the stress out of you. There's still going to be things that get you excited or, you know, kind of get all those feels going. But then you know you've got a tool in your back pocket that you can pull out and do it at a moment's notice, pretty much wherever you are.
Sounds to me like I'm going to get one of these things and wear it around myself when I'm on the air for CBS 3 hours every week, every Saturday and Sunday. Okay, well, that begs the question for folks that have now seen this going, yeah, sign me up. Well, how do they do that, please? Where do they go?
Yeah, head to neuropeakpro.com. It's neuropeakpro.com. And you'll see in the upper right-hand corner, there's a buy now button. The Intel belt, it retails for $199. So it's not a massive lift for what we think is the benefits that it can bring.
Huh?
And the app's set up in a way to walk you through the learning process the same way that I've sat down across the table from, you know, Jordan Spieth, Zach Johnson, Madeline Sagstrom, some of the best players in the world to be able to do that. And so we set up the learning to go through those same key fundamentals: posture, muscle control, the
Mhm.
respiration rate. And then ultimately for our golfers, there's a coaching pack in there. Like, how do I take this to the golf course? How do I start to implement it into my game? And um, I think the listeners will find that even just carving out a few minutes a day for yourself, taking a deep breath or a few of them, but doing it the right way, you're gonna feel something that you may have thought you were never gonna be able to find again. Because I think we're all really good at being stressed. We're all really good at going fast, and having a tangible way to learn and be able to influence your nervous system in a way that you can perform the way that you know and you want to becomes really fun.
I couldn't think of a better way to start the day and end the day. Just to spend 10 minutes just working on this.
You're right, and I'll honestly say one of the first things that we hear back from those who start training with the Intel belt is they notice a change in their sleep. Um, Especially those who add that session in kind of nearer their bedtime.
Hmm.
Because, you know, we've all had those nights, and sometimes they happen more often than what we ever want them to, where we're replaying the events of the day, anticipating the events of tomorrow, the woulda, couldas, and that's not the spot where we want our body to be in. That's not the optimal state to be in to help get a good night's sleep. And so just leaning back into what we talked about of slowing the breath down, letting that be a cue to help slow the whole body down. You know, we want the body to be slow so that we can get a good night's sleep. And so sleep is one of the big things. Starting the day, like you said, is awesome. You know, just kind of sets the tone. But like, here we are, you and I have been talking for 45 minutes. You know, there's nothing better to do
Slow down. Hmm.
than slow down.
Andy, this has been fantastic. Folks, go get yourself one. It'll be well with you. Well, your golf game and your overall well-being. Can folks follow you? Are you interested in that sort of stuff? If are you on social media and the like?
Yeah, I would direct them to the Neuropeak Pro socials, on Instagram, on Facebook. It's just at Neuropeak Pro. A lot of the content you'll actually be able to see some of the other athletes and that we work with and how they're starting to implement it into their games as well.
Appreciate your time. This is great, and I'm so glad we got you on. It's been awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark.